Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. So I'm sure you guys have been watching the news and you've seen the devastating fires in Los Angeles.
And said, how does this happen? And she said, look, we need to do changes. And we're in the midst of already talking about a different water plan for LA County.
Another horrible wildfire in the state of California, this time in LA, that's taken so much from so many people. And in tragic moments like these, even though it's hard, it's important to ask the tough questions. And in this case, the question we've been asking is failed Democrat leadership and mismanagement in the state playing a role here, as we're now getting reports that supposedly the area's fire hydrants ran dry in the midst of the crisis. And that, of course, opens up a whole can of worms, even going back to the Trump-Joe Rogan podcast and well beyond, where it seems Trump might have been ahead of the curve on yet again another issue. In other words, Trump was right again, just add another coin to the jar. Well, let's delve into the details. Let's ask those questions. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so you saw what happened. And then we've got these reports over here suggesting that the fire hydrants ran dry as Pacific Palisades burned. LA City officials blame tremendous demand. But I mean, really? Fire hydrants running out of water? If there's an issue of not reaching the demand, well, someone's got to be held accountable, right? That's kind of the government's job, to be prepared and have enough supply to meet the demand when it's necessary, especially in moments of crisis. And obviously, we've heard it forever that California is in a drought. They're lacking water. They need water to combat the drought and to be prepared in situations of wildfire, but the government refuses to take the situation seriously. And trust me, the warnings have been out there. Again, Donald Trump's been talking about this.
They said, we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why don't you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north of water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. I could have water for all of that land. Water for your forests. Your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah.
Okay?
Dangerous.
That water could be routed. You could have everything. Oh, not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And, there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it. And all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up, get rid of the leaves, get rid of, leaves that are sitting there for 5 years. And
we'll certainly get rid of the dead fall.
And get rid of the trees that have fallen.
Yeah.
There's Donald Trump, I guess, right on the money again, warning about the state of California's refusal to build water reservoirs or getting behind any water infrastructure projects at all. And of course, we could go back into relatively recent history during Donald Trump's first term in office when dealing with wildfires back then. He spoke profusely about the state's refusal to clear the dry bush buildup in the forests that essentially acts as mass kindling when met with even the slightest source of ignition.
It's a disgraceful thing. Old trees are sitting there rotting and dry, and instead of cleaning it up, they don't touch them. They leave them, and we end up with these massive fires that we're paying hundreds of billions of dollars for to fix, and the destruction is incredible. So I think California ought to get their act together and clean up their forests and manage their forests.
And so there seems to be a little bit of a trend building up here, no? It's got me asking the question again, how much is failed Democrat leadership and mismanagement responsible for the devastation that we've seen? There's a lot of talk happening here.
8 years ago, California voted to approve a $7.5 billion water bond to construct water storage facilities. Maybe you want to take a guess how many storage facilities have been built in those 8 years. Not one has reached completion. Not one. And meanwhile, all the snow melt and all that water is flowing right into the Pacific Ocean.
Supposedly, 8 years ago, California voted to construct water facilities that would store and capture fresh water. Well, all these years later, not a single one has been built. Yeah, don't you think that would help during moments like this? California approved taxpayer-funded projects to build facilities that would have helped alleviate the drought conditions in the state. And obviously, it would have provided resources to combat wildfires. But guess what? Nothing was built. And where do you think the money went? Well, I'll tell you. It probably vanished into the bureaucratic black hole. Just like California's high-speed rail project, that's become a running joke at this point. Billions have been spent, and California doesn't have a functional train to show for it. Total incompetence and negligence. And now while the state burns, what is Gavin Newsom and the Democrats doing? Well, I don't know, probably holding another press conference, bragging about how great California is. That's all Gavin Newsom ever seems to do. And I'm saying that to segue to a point. You notice how he's always talking about how California is the biggest economy. We got the largest tax base, the most amount of business happening. Well, in moments like these, it's got you thinking, what do they have to show for it? California should be leading the world in infrastructure, technology, and especially preparedness for moments like these. It's supposed to be the engineering capital of the world. California theoretically should look like a futuristic utopia with all the tax revenue and resources at its disposal, but instead, it's a dystopian nightmare with tent cities that stretch for miles, public spaces, parks, sidewalks, public transportation overrun by heroin junkies and crackheads doing their drugs out in the open with kids watching without a freaking care in the world. In other words, this is what happens when you prioritize woke nonsense over actual governance. You know, this is the state that's prioritized endless subsidies to the homeless crisis and endless taxpayer dollars to anything woke and anything DEI related. All the while, meanwhile, vital projects like water reservoirs or water rerouting projects, even just basic infrastructure projects, yeah, all that I guess goes on the back burner. It's a complete disgrace. And it seems to me like Trump saw this coming, like he warned them, like he's been calling out California's failure to manage its forest for years, like he's been talking about the lack of water infrastructure and the complete ineptitude of the leadership there, their little puppet governor, or as he refers to him, Gavin Newsom. You've got bad policy, a bloated bureaucracy that's essentially paralyzed the state from being able to do anything meaningful or productive. And in my view, what we're seeing here is a warning for the rest of the country. The Democratic model of big governance, big government, endless spending, and prioritizing all the woke nonsense and woke demands of the leftist elitist class, well, it simply leads to disaster, like literal disaster. California is the canary in the coal mine, essentially showing us in real time what happens when ideology, culture, and feelings trumps competence and basic common sense. The state of California is the cautionary tale. And you know, Donald Trump's got me reinvigorated like never before. You know, I've been waiting for somebody to push big ambitions, big dreams, and just thinking about California and the droughts that they're experiencing, it's got me thinking about all the tax money that we waste on all kinds of useless garbage instead of doing cool stuff. Imagine rerouting water down to California, like the project Trump was referring to. You know, Egypt's doing something of the sorts, a project essentially reclaiming the desert and making it lush green land again. It's got me thinking, why aren't we dreaming? Why aren't we doing things? Again, the world's biggest economy, and there's nothing to show for it. At least not much, and especially not in these deep blue Democrat utopias. Government should be focused on big projects that deliver basic needs and resources to the people. But instead, you got billions upon billions of dollars bouncing around just lining people's pockets, serving no purpose to the actual people. It's a complete disgrace, and it's getting in the way of the nation's ability to dream big and do big. And these California wildfires, in my view, it's got to be a wake-up call. Maybe California needs more water capturing and storage infrastructure and less mass crackhead tent city subsidies. I don't know, just a thought. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.